Hey guys, this is Stephanie and I'm Stacks on Stacks on Stacks. Today I'm coming to you with my most disappointing reads of 2018. I have 13 books on this list that I'm going to talk to you about today, so I'm not going to go too in depth with any one in particular, so that this video isn't 45 minutes long. And I have my heater running. You could probably hear it because I decided to wear a tank top that was happy looking, and it's like 12 degrees outside. And I'm in a basement, so it's cold. But I wanted to wear a happy tank top because I was grumpy for like a whole day after I filmed my worst reads, and I thought, you know, let's keep it happy and light. If any of these books are your most favorite book in the world, I am sorry if I'm insulting it. And do keep in mind that these are not my most hated books of the year. These are just the most disappointing, which means that I thought they were going to be amazing and they just turned out to be okay, or some of them did turn out to be bad. Most of these are going to be unpopular opinions. I feel like because they were disappointing somewhere, they were supposed to be good, probably on BookTube, and then they weren't. So I am expecting to get some maybe negative comments, but you know, if you want to post them, I guess post them, but we can have different opinions. It is all good. And I'm feeling lazy, so I may or may not have a picture up of the book that I'm talking about. I didn't actually keep a lot of the books that I found disappointing. I offloaded a lot of them when I got rid of a bunch of books a few weeks ago, so I may or may not have a picture of it up here. You never know with me. The first book I'm going to talk about is Stalking Jack the Ripper, and I don't remember the author's name, so I will put a picture here. This is a book that was talked about a ton on BookTube just a few years ago, and then I think there's two more with the same set of characters that came out. And I really wanted to like this book. I really wanted to be interested in it and enjoy the ride. And it was just okay. It wasn't terrible. It was just okay. The whole point of this is there's this girl, like late 1800s, and she's different than the other girls, and she's interested in the human body and how it works. And her uncle's a mortician, so she watches him do dissections and figure out why people die and all this kind of stuff. And that part of it actually was pretty interesting. A little inaccurate, I will say, because I have done a dissection course before, and some of the stuff I'm like, she hasn't been around a fresh dead body, but most people haven't. But I found it a little too YA, maybe a little too predictable with the romance, a little too predictable who the bad guy was, a little just kind of so I just was disappointed. Like, I really wanted to like it more. Now, people who have read the first one actually said that the second one's pretty good, but the third one's great. So I probably will eventually continue on with the series. I just was disappointed in the first one. The next book I have is probably one that people love that I was just disappointed in, and that is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I don't know what I was expecting. I read this for the Tome Infinity and Beyond Readathon last year, and I just was expecting to absolutely love this book. I was expecting to be blown away. Best book ever. 5-star read, and it wasn't a 5-star read. It was a 3 something read. They go into the science about it a lot, and they totally lost me. Totally lost me talking about atoms and the genes and stuff like that. And all it made me want to do is watch the movie that was made in the 90s, even though it was a very 90s movie with very 90s clothes, because the way they explained it there is way more interesting than the way they explained it in here. And it just kind of lost me, and the kids were so irritating. I wanted them to get eaten by the dinosaurs. Both of them. I was like, you know, then the dinosaur would be happy, and I would be happy. I feel like everybody wins. Let's just sacrifice the children. They were annoying, and I just was really let down. I was expecting a lot more from this book, and I don't know. So I don't think I will be continuing on the series, though I'm more than happy to read this author another time. The next disappointing read, and I should have known it was going to be disappointing. I should have known. The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. And you can't see it that well because it's white, but it's an ugly cover anyway, so I'm just going to put it down. I read this when I heard they were doing To All the Boys I Loved Before as a movie, and I had read the first two in that series, and I'm still up in the air whether I'll read the third one or not, but I thought I should read that other series, and I have the book, so I should just read them. So I read it sometime last summer, and it was just so YA contemporary, predictable, dumb girl doing dumb things. I was just like, why did I have any expectation for this? Haven't I learned? Don't I know better? How old are you, Stephanie? Come on. It was disappointing. Another disappointing read I have, and this one, most people liked this book, and I just was struggling through the whole thing was Reaper at the Gates by Saba Tahir. Now, I really did like the first two books. The first book I think I liked a ton. Second book I didn't like as much, but I was like, you know, sometimes you get middle book syndrome and that's just what it is. So I was willing to jump to the next book. Now, first of all, I thought this was a 3-book series, so I was sorely disappointed when I got to the end of the book and it's not over. There's one more, and I was like, oh, I thought this was it. What I didn't like about this book is I felt it was kind of all over the place and it was hard to follow sometimes. Like, they introduced some new characters, which you usually do when you have another book in a series, but the characters' names were kind of similar to other characters, and then I was confused. Is this a new character or is it not? I don't remember. It's also been a year and a half since I've read the second book, and now I'm reading the third book, and I can't remember people's names. I don't remember where people left off. I'm a little confused at some of the relationships because I don't remember them going that way, but they must have gone that way. And I just lost interest. Like, I started here and I was just like, this isn't doing it. It's just not doing it. And it just didn't do it for me. So that is where I stood with that book. It was disappointing. I still think I gave it like maybe even a 4.0, but I was expecting 5 stars. And I am going to have to watch some reviews or something before I ever read the last book because I don't think I retained very much of that. Next disappointing book is Majesty's Dragons by Naomi Novik. And this is one I don't think it's talked about a ton on BookTube, but she is an author that is known, and I was expecting it to be a great book, and I was so bored. I was so bored. I could barely finish it, and the only reason I did is because my husband picked my TBR that month, and I was like, I'm going to read the books you choose. Now, I think I read like 3 of the books he chose, and I think I read other things I wanted to for the rest because that was like the second one, and I was like, I didn't like the first one. I didn't like the second one, and I was like, you're lucky if I read a third one. It was really slow moving. I actually enjoyed the part with the dragon, Temeraire. I liked what he had to say, like he's a talking dragon, and he kind of starts out as a kid and he grows up to more of a teenager by the end of the book. I enjoyed that aspect. I enjoyed the bonding between him and his master. I didn't enjoy anything else. Like, nothing else about the book appealed to me at all. I won't continue the series. Didn't like it. Was super disappointed because it was supposed to be amazing. The next one I have was very disappointing last year, a little popular, and that is The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the 4th and final book in the Raven Boys quartet. And my problem with this book is the end. I honestly was enjoying the ride 3/4 of the way through the book. Actually, at the end, like the last 10% of the book, I was like, what are they doing? Are you serious? And there was another character that they just added, and I felt like he was a random ad because they felt like, oh, we need somebody to play this part, so we're just gonna add this character. I felt like he didn't have any story. He didn't fit because we had 3 books leading up, and then, yeah, he just didn't fit, and I didn't like that. I felt like it was very forced and very rushed, and then the ending was like, and this, the end. Nothing was wrapped up. Characters weren't addressed, plot lines were not addressed. It was just like, and we're together and we're happy. It was super annoying, and I was beyond disappointed. This book almost hit my worst reads because it was just such a letdown. We had 3 great books, and the majority of this book was quite good, and then nothing. And I was like, how is anybody happy with this series? I was so disappointed. I'm actually considering getting rid of the 2 books I do have in the series because I don't think I'll read it again, because it was just so disappointing. The next disappointing read I have to talk about is Poison Study by Maria V. Schneider. Now, I was told about this book a very long time ago on BookTube, and I've been wanting to read it for years and wanting to read Maria V. Schneider, and lots of people actually really like her writing. So I was going into this with some pretty high expectations. Why this was disappointing is basically there is a rape scene. I wasn't told that there was going to be a rape scene, and it's not that you have to forewarn me every time that there's going to be violence or there's going to be a sex scene or anything like that. Like, you don't need to do a disclaimer on the book for me, not really, but it was the way that she wrote it, the way she handled it, and more on the way the character handled it. Like, the character who this happened to was just like, hey, yeah, it's no big deal, whatever, it's all good. Okay, let's move on. And I'm like, that's not how that works. That is not how that works. Like, we're talking trauma for a very, very, very long time, and she's just ready to go, ready to move on. I don't have a problem sleeping with somebody new, and I'm like, I don't know. So, I do think I want to continue the series. I think I want to read this writer again. I just really didn't like that happened and the way she handled it. I found it just beyond poor writing, just poor character development, poor lots of things were poor. Didn't like that. I just don't have the gumption to continue on yet because it was so disappointing. It was so disappointing. The next disappointing read I have is Graceling by Kristen Kishore, and that's kind of glary, isn't it? It's a pretty cover. Didn't really like the book that much, and I was expecting it to be amazing because everybody's like, oh, I love that book. I loved it when I was in middle school, and then I reread it and it was so great. I didn't love it. The main character wasn't all that likable. I felt like the plot was very like, we're doing something. Now we're not going to do anything. And we're going to sit around and not discuss anything and not do anything and fill about 25 pages with nothing. And then we're going to do the thing and then nothing. And it just was so up and down. The pacing was way off. And the character development was non-existent. And the plot was way too easily solved. Like it was solved and there's like 20 pages left. And I'm like, what are we doing for 20 pages? For 20 pages, we're just going to tell you how great life is for these characters. And I was like, yeah, I don't like that. It was very disappointing. I expected something great and I got disappointed. And people still love this book. Just not me. My next disappointing read is The Masterpiece by Francine Rivers. I have read tons of Francine Rivers, probably almost everything she's written. It just came out last year and I was super excited to get the new Francine Rivers and read it, and it was predictable, ridiculously predictable. It was like, oh, what's gonna happen? Who's behind that door with that handsome low voice? So predictable. It was so terrible. Like, I don't know what happened. Normally I love her books and I almost want to go back and read a different book just to make sure she can write, right? Like I wasn't like in a daze in another world. It wasn't another Stephanie. She can write, right? I don't know. So disappointing. The next one I'm going to talk about, a lot of people loved, I did not, and that is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now this is the first Holly Black I've read. I had very high expectations, in addition to which I got it in a book box and it's supposed to be this amazing book about Fae. Now the Fae that I enjoy is the Fae that is in the Dresden Files, which is adult, and this is YA. So I expected some differences, but it was just not great. Like it was beyond disappointing. This book almost hit my worst reads, except that I didn't want to have like 25 worst reads. So I just put it in this one instead. It really could almost be in the worst books of last year. I didn't like any of the characters really. I didn't think that the plot had a very strong driving force. I felt like we went in thinking it was this, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, your plot's over here. And I'm like, you can't change the whole plot line in the middle of the book just because that's not a plot twist. That's a new plot. And it did not grab me. I didn't enjoy it. I found myself having to push to even finish the book. And then the end happened and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to keep reading this one. I'm not going to keep doing it at all. This is not for me. Nope. Okay, let's move on. Now, these are my top 3 most disappointing reads of the year. The first one is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Now, here's the thing with this one. My sister-in-law read this and loved it. I actually think she read the whole trilogy and was like, you need to read this. You're going to love it. And I've heard by tons of people on BookTube that it's amazing, it's great, and I would absolutely love it. Problem is, I didn't absolutely love it. Now, maybe when I was reading this, I was not in the mood for it, or maybe I wasn't focusing very well on what's going on. I was a little confused sometimes at like different names and different people and the prince of this and the queen of that. Was a little confusing towards me. I'm going to put this down. It's glaring and that's bothering me. But there were large chunks of this that I was just like, it's just not engaging me, but I feel like it should. I feel like I should be a Robin Hobb fan. I feel like I should enjoy her writing, and I just really didn't. I didn't hate it. I just didn't love it, and I thought I was going to love it. So this is actually a book that I'm going to be giving another shot. I don't know if I'll read it this year or next year, but I will be rereading this book. Hopefully when I'm in more of a mood for something along that lines. Now that I've read it, I kind of know what to expect. And hopefully I will enjoy it the second time around because I really think I would enjoy it. I just didn't. I was just disappointed. But this is probably the only one on the list that I'm willing to read a second time. My second to last disappointing book would have to be Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Now this book was raved about last year. So many people's favorite book. So I read it. And I was beyond disappointed. The only thing I really liked about this book is it took place in the 90s, and I was a teenager in the 90s, so I really liked the setting. Like, they were wearing Doc Martens. That's what people wore back then. They were sitting around watching Jerry Springer. That's what people watched. Like, I actually felt like I was back in the 90s, and I was like, that's so cool. But I felt like the plot was really weak. There were two main plot lines, and one of them was actually pretty good, but the main plot line was pretty weak. The characters were also weak and kind of all over. They had a lot of like flaws, and not like, oh, she's flawed, more like plot holes, like character holes. I don't know if that's a thing, but it should be a thing. Like there were holes in their character, which that character would do that, or I don't understand why this person responded this way. And I was also confused by a lot of that. The reasons the characters did the actions they did, I felt like they just didn't flesh out the character enough, because it doesn't make sense that character would do that thing. That's not something they would do. And I felt lost most of the time. I felt like she was trying to write this poetic piece, this piece that's going to change lives and make you view things the way you've never viewed them before and feel things. And parts of it, I was like, maybe, but the vast majority of it, I was like, nah, it just didn't do it for me. I don't think I've talked to anybody else that hasn't loved this book. It's kind of like All the Light You Cannot See. I didn't love that one either, and people were just like, how could you not love that? I'm like, because it was boring, and you kept swapping from one character I kind of liked, one character I wasn't even interested in, and I got bored. I did finish it though. But I feel like that's what this is. Everybody loved it, and I'm the only one that's like, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't hate it. I just found it severely disappointing. And let me know if you agree with me on that one. And my possibly most disappointing read of last year was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Suzanne, it's not Collins. I don't remember her name. I'll try and put a picture up here. I was so disappointed in this book. I read it in like September, I think, maybe August. And it's a chunker. It's like 1,000 pages. It was the biggest book I read last year. And my problem with it was I just was pushing myself to read it. And I was even doing a buddy read. And I just kept pushing through and being like, it's going to get better. This is like an acclaimed book. Like some people are like, this is my favorite book ever written. And I didn't see why it was your favorite book ever written. Unless you're like, I want everybody to know that I read this huge book. It was over 1,000 pages. I'm going to say it's my favorite book so everybody knows that I can read books that are 1,000 pages. It didn't do it for me. It was okay. I was supposed to be getting into a book that was like an alternative history book with magic. There was so little magic. I was like, I want Harry Potter here, guys. And you didn't give me Harry Potter. You got me, this magic is so hard. And then you lay an egg about that big, and that's about all we get. I didn't want a little egg. I wanted, you know, Harry Potter, and I didn't get Harry Potter. I didn't get magic. I got magic. It just was not, it was disappointing. I didn't hate it. It wasn't even bad writing. The writing was actually kind of beautiful, and I can see that. I just didn't enjoy it. I didn't like the ride, and I didn't enjoy it so much, to be honest. I don't remember how it ends. I don't remember. I remember there were like two characters I kind of liked, and like they're few and far between. Didn't hear about them. They died. I don't even know what happened to them. I don't even know how the book ended. I don't remember. I just remember being like, that was it? Okay. Like, Disappoint City. I didn't like it. So, that is it. I will admit I'm not as grumpy as I was after my worst read video, but I'm a little grumpy. But those are my most disappointing reads of the year. But if you've read any of these, by all means, let me know. Let me know your thoughts on them as well. Let me know if you thought this book was disappointing or absolutely not, Steph. You're just crazy. This book was the bee's knees. I want to know. Also, let me know down below what your most disappointing book was. Now, again, keep in mind, disappointing doesn't mean worst. Disappointing is, I thought it was a here, and it was a here, or here, or here, or here. Any of those below will totally work. But I'm super interested to know what you guys found disappointing down below. Feel free to like or subscribe, or you can even click the little bell icon if you want to be notified when I post videos. Sometimes YouTube doesn't tell you guys when I post videos. I don't know why, but it doesn't. So the bell icon comes in handy. I post videos on Monday or Tuesday and on Friday. So feel free to come back. You can find me here then. I'll look forward to talking to you guys soon. Goodbye.